Hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Jeanette, do we know each other? Are we friends?
Yes, you interviewed
My
me.
love it. I'm so
Good
glad
to
to be
see
here.
you.
I'm sorry I woke up a little bit late this morning, but it's really nice to be here. And I did kind of forget what I was speaking on today. I knew I was speaking, but I didn't remember what it was on. It's 8 and 9, and it's just one of those things that it's always so fitting. Whatever I have to talk about to somebody else is, in my experience, only used to benefit me in the end. It's like I go through all this stuff, and it says in the book that the greatest asset is my shitty, shitty past. And that you really wouldn't trust me as an alcoholic who claims recovery if I didn't have one. If I just came here some CEO's wife who dented my Mercedes a couple too many times at the country club and decided to stop drinking. You know what I mean? Like, that's not my experience. I didn't recover through merit. God wasn't like, we should save her. She's a winner. It was completely the opposite. There's no merit to my recovery here. It means that I did box check with God and able to become a recovered alcoholic. And what does that even mean? I actually really tend to jar people with the word recovered, even though it's in the big book 16 times. And um, why I say that all the time is because I offer the solution that has some depth and weight, and in AA today, you really can walk in a meeting and not hear what alcoholism is, or that there's a solution to it. And sometimes you hear people actually um, offer the impossible if you have alcoholism like me. Some things like just don't drink no matter what, or don't drink a day at a time, or put a plug in the jug. I actually spiritually can't do that. I can't do a lot of things that are recommended in AA meeting, even like stay sober a day at a time. I do get like these monthly resentments about a slogan for some reason that I do look at, but just don't drink them a day at a time. That's a new one for me. Like it doesn't say that until the end of step 10. You don't have a day at a nothing until the end of step 10, So again, I don't like to suggest the impossible, but I do like to suggest that you can recover from alcoholism, because that's a fucking miracle, And I don't claim that as my own. I didn't, Laura, do it. And I find myself to be kind of a self-loathing narcissist. Somebody put it that way, that I'm in the gutter looking down on you. That's kind of who and what I am in my soul. So when I can say that I recovered as a result of working the 12 steps and I didn't make anything up, I didn't do it. It's not, I wish I could claim this. I wish that I could like Russell brand it and write it in a book and be like, it's Laura's directions to recover. And it's not, this is the first thing I've ever done in my whole life. That wasn't my big idea. That wasn't my plan and design. And actually was 12 things I didn't want to do and 3 things today that I still don't want to do, So if I can get on here and say that you can recover from alcoholism as a result of having an entire psychic change just by working the steps the way they're laid out in the book, I think that's really good news. I'm like a hype man for the 12 steps. I'm a cheerleader for newcomers who get through the work and sponsor others quickly. I am an AA I don't like to say enthusiast because I don't even really like it. Which I know sounds terrible, but it's actually a selling point for a lot of the people that I sponsor, is that I don't love all the things that I have to do. And on page 26, it kind of lays that out for me. It says, none of us, there's a solution. None of y'all are going to like it. There's self-searching. There's leveling your pride. There's confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for you to get well. And that I read today as step 9, So it's telling me there are requirements to recover. You aren't going to like any of them. And good news, I didn't either. None of this stuff was easy. But when I finally got here the second time, it was very clearly explained to me what I was suffering from. And like I mentioned and alluded to in the beginning, when we come to Alcoholics Anonymous, we are not always presented with the problem of what alcoholism is, They have this thing called ID meetings where I live in Australia, and you stand up and you talk about your drinking, and you talk about your drinking, and you talk about your drinking. And I didn't identify anything from those meetings, I didn't have 7 DUIs. My husband did. He had a DUI, He wasn't dying of drinking. What does that mean? So you're talking about your DUI. Well, I didn't have one of those. And talking about vomiting. Well, I have a phobia of vomiting. I take a pill for it when I drink. I don't have that experience either, or losing your children, or all these things. And I didn't identify with the drinking stories because I had arranged my life to suit this show that I could drink when I wanted to drink, looked lovely. Besides, I was, dying and suicidal all the time. It looked fine. So in these identification meetings, when people would talk about their drinking and talk about their drinking, I didn't identify what alcoholism is. I always thought it was just that I drank more than everybody else, and I did. Of course I did. But actually, I didn't because I surrounded myself with heavy drinkers and people that drank the way that I did, and so it looked very normal. And again, that wasn't really made clear to me until I opened the big book and it said the alcoholic life seems like a normal one. I didn't know because that is the show that I created for myself. But what I did understand is that I had always not been okay inside. And this is not an alcoholic problem. This is the human spiritual malady, which the book begins to talk about. But until I was approached by a woman armed with some facts about herself who offered to take me through the big book and we started reading the pages. Again, I never heard this stuff before. As far back as I can remember, I was restless, irritable, discontent. I was an angry child. I was a mean kid, and I have this little girl. I have a daughter now who vomits rainbows. She's just okay when she wakes up. She's the kid who she's at this age, the age that I begin to like steal money and smoke cigarettes behind the church. She's still playing with slime. It's like she can just be all right waking up in the morning. And looking back, I don't ever relate to that. As far back as I can remember, the only real feelings that I had were restless, irritable, discontent. And I hated feeling that way. I hated being me since I was a little tiny kid. And my mom would put me in a lot of therapy. I had a nice mom. I wasn't horrifically abused as a child. She'd put me in a lot of therapy, and they'd always say, well, what happened when you were 5 and became so angry? And I'm like, I don't know. My dad left. And they'd be like, well, that's why we've cracked the case. You're miserable because you blame yourself for your dad leaving. And I remember at like 6 years old going, no, I don't, not at all, actually. like I had enough sense about me. I was always a smart kid. I knew that this wasn't my fault. I never blamed myself for this. I didn't even blame him for leaving. So what they would do throughout the years of going all this therapy is trying to pinpoint what harm had been come to me that had made me so miserable, that had made me so restless, so irritable, discontent. And looking for other things, I started smoking a pack of cigarettes a day by the time I was 11. And like I said, I have a 12-year-old who just plays with fidget toys, like this isn't the same person here. I started doing cocaine in year 7 and meth the next year. It was like anything that I could find to put into myself to change me from being restless, irritable, discontent to happy, joyous, and free. I would do that, money, power, prestige, sex, drugs, alcohol, and men. Like it's all just whatever made me feel happy, joyous, and free, even though temporarily. So, yeah, I tried all of those things, and all through the years, they'd be like, oh, crack the case. Therapist would be like, crack the case again. You're promiscuous because of your dad. And I'd be like, this just isn't adding up in my brain. We can pinpoint every single traumatic experience of my entire life, and it still didn't make sense to me that I was doing these horrifically destructive things, that I'm addicted to meth by the time I'm 17 years old. And we can't blame my dad, but I had nothing else to go on. One of the parts in the book that I really relate to that we start talking about in the doctor's opinion, where it's like, it didn't make sense to me that I'm drinking myself to death because I'm an outright mental defective. Even though some of us kind of are, even though I have these triggers and traumas is the way that I actually reword that in the book. It didn't make enough sense to me that the reason that I'm dying of alcoholism at such an early age and addiction and destroying my family is because, my dad, that it just didn't add up. Like, I love the part that it says that it's not enough to be told that I have triggers and traumas. Like, I'm literally dying here of addiction. So it's not that. What are my triggers and traumas? My triggers are, I woke up and blinked this morning. That's when I want to drink of alcohol. Like, I had the best day of my life today. I should drink. I had the worst day of my life today. I'm sad. I'm happy. I look good today. I don't look good today. It's raining outside. It's sunny outside. There's a dog. All these things are triggers to drink for me. So that trigger thing really didn't make sense either. I couldn't just pinpoint traumas to make me not drink And I couldn't just justify that there was some trigger to drink, because some days it was just me opening my eyes and consciously breathing in. And the next thought would be, when can I start drinking? So there was going to be no hope for me there. If you gave me the psychological answer to my drinking, there would be no hope for me. I should have just suicided. And that's what I wanted to do at the end of my drinking, because I'd tried all that stuff. I'd even tried hypnosis 3 times. Do you know how expensive that is? $374. I know, because I went so many times to get hypnosis to quit drinking. So throughout my life, people tried to make me better, to fix me. And I actually didn't start drinking till I was a little bit older. I mean, 16. Like, I'd been through multiple addictions by then. But alcohol worked the best out of all the things that made me go from restless, irritable, discontent to happy, joyous, and free. It was alcohol. That was the greatest, best trick I ever found. And if that still worked, I would not be here. I remember some things when we talked about alcoholism, just drinking too much, was that I did finally relate to in the book when I began to go through this with a recovered woman, is things like the progressive nature of alcoholism in the 4 husbands, and that I didn't start out a bedridden alcoholic, even though that's where I ended. I started out a great time. I started out with the chick that we go make out in the parking lot. I was a great time on weekends, and it didn't make sense to me that all of a sudden, I would drink 2 nights a week, and then all of a sudden it was 3, and then all of a sudden Wednesday was considered a weekend, and so was Tuesday and also Monday, because it's on the other side, and then all of a sudden the time in the day, I wouldn't start drinking till I went out, but then all of a sudden it was like, but I should have this drink with dinner, and then all of a sudden my kids are now drinking or eating dinner at 2 p.m. because that's when I could start drinking, and then it was like, well, it's just a really nice day, and this rosé wine is a morning wine, and the things that didn't make sense to me about triggers and traumas is that the time all of a sudden during the day, and till I was drinking all the time, even when I began not to want to. And so when people, the first time I came to AA, would say things like, just don't drink today, that really confused me, because I kept trying that and failing at that. I just don't drink a day at a time. I said, well, I try that every morning, actually, and I actually pray for that even every single day, and I wasn't able to stay sober till 10. It's like my mind would change, and I'd talk myself into a drink, never away. And I spent a lot of time, the first time I came to AA, going to meetings. I got sober in America. I live in Australia full time, Aussie, but I loved the fellowship in America. I still love the fellowship in America, not so much here, but I loved it. I walked in and there were these beautiful women that would be nice to me, and these lovely old men who'd throw candy my way, and someone would give me coffee and they'd say, keep coming back. And at that point, I had never been asked back anywhere, so people who actually wanted me around was lovely. And America, y'all have donuts. We don't have donuts in Australia. I know, it's wild. Like, you don't eat donuts. And I loved the free coffee, and I loved feeling like people wanted me around. And I even liked doing the dishes and being part of, and I loved going to Denny's, and I loved standing up and talking about myself in a room full of people. When people say, like, alcoholism has characteristics, I don't agree at all. I don't have those characteristics. I always felt like I fit in everywhere. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. It was usually fake, but I'm very gregarious. So I loved standing up and using AA like comedy hour. I love talking about my problems, and I love dumping it on people. And I love people saying, keep coming back. We love you till you love yourself. I never cracked open that book or did a damn thing and that was suggested. But, I just loved the fellowship, and it was fantastic. And I remember I was there for like 30 days, and I went up and I got my 30-day chip, because I was like, I've been here about a month and that's what these people do, So I went up and I got my AA chip, my 30-day chip, and everyone's hugging me. And like, I think one old lady cried. I sat down and the guy next to me was like, so we drank together 4 days ago. And I'm like, I know, but it makes them so happy. It makes them so happy when I am sober, and just completely over my head. I was in AA drinking, pretending to be sober because it felt good. It was another thing. It was just another thing that felt good. And, I think I stuck around maybe 2 more weeks after that, drinking every single day in AA, pretending to be sober. And It was like it's like lying to the nicest kid in the classroom. You know what I mean? It was just so dishonest that I couldn't keep that up. And so coming to meetings drunk and smelling me and still saying I was sober, and I just couldn't hold that. I couldn't wear that mask for very long. So, I left and I was like, when I'm ready, this is going to work. This is the place this is going to work. And I thought I would just go drink for the weekend. And it took me 8 years to come back to AA, 8 years. And I looked like I was at a pretty gross rock bottom then, it was like 8 a.m. shower drinking at the 8 years previously, yet it progressed. And I fell in love straight away. It was actually why I left AA, to be honest. I met my now husband of 14 years. And I remember being told something that isn't in the book, that we don't date in the first year. And I go, when my husband walked out of his house, I knew it was my husband. I go, oh, shit, he's so good looking, right on. I knew it was my husband. And I go, but AA says I can't date. And, it's good that stuff isn't in the book, because I did have to go through all this stuff, and I believe it's all God's will that my life dive bombed even worse, to get back here to have a real spiritual experience. But today I really like to stick to just the words in the book, and I don't make anything up. It doesn't say that, good news. It doesn't say that you can't have sex for a year. But I went out for 8 more years. Being in love kept me just my head above water with my drinking just for a little bit of time. And he liked to drink too. So every day we would drink a lot, and almost every day my behavior would get worse, even though I didn't want it to. And I spent a lot of time knowing this man was so perfect and amazing. And we moved to Australia and had this fantastic, whimsical life. And I would blame everything else for why my behavior was so bad until there was nothing left to blame that made sense. And then I started turning on him. In an alcoholic marriage, what that looked like is that very slowly and surely I started chipping away at my husband's self-esteem, my husband's ego, my husband's self-confidence, even though his self-confidence is what made me fall in love with him in the first place. This man was so confident. He was almost arrogant. It was like so hot, okay, when you're really broken. Arrogance is hot when you're young and dumb. And this is what I loved about him. He's confident and successful, and all of a sudden I had nothing left to blame about why I was so restless, irritable, discontent. And I started coming after him, and it was like little tiny digs. Like, I need you to help more with the kids. No, you're not doing it right. I need you to help around the house. Not like that, you idiot. I need you to make more money. And then he'd go get a new job. And then I'd be like, ugh, you're never home. You're just failing as a dad. And then he'd stay home. And I'm like, ew, you're always fucking around, like every single thing that he would do to try to change, that I directed him to do to change to make me happy, he would do, and it failed. So 8 years of married to an alcoholic, I chipped away at my favorite toy, slowly but surely, until I broke it. And I didn't see it. I didn't see that all of his self-confidence, all of his self-worth, all of this big, huge man that he was, that slowly but surely, day to day, me blaming him for my drinking, for my feelings, for the way that everything was, never being good enough, I really, truly broke him. And Al-Anon is an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing where they will do anything to try to fix the alcoholic. And when that fails, it can be physically, mentally, and emotionally, spiritually devastating to them as well. And he failed. My husband's job is that he goes into companies to fix them. And he tried for 8 years to fix me, and I only got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. At the end of my drinking, I was bedridden and heavily suicidal. And one day I finally said, I can't do it anymore after the worst day of my life. I lived in the far north Queensland. And it's like a town of 3,000 people. Just think like the bush, but then a rainforest and the ocean, and like 35 people live there. There's one grocery store. And it's very tropical, and it's very beautiful, and it's like being on holidays all the time. And one day I got very drunk, and my kids were little, and every single teacher, every single parent, every single friend that I'd made was in the Facebook mothers group. Every teacher of my children's as well. And I decided to get on this Facebook mothers group at 11 p.m. and tell them that they are trash, that they're all trash. They are all white trash, and I hate all of them. I laughed today, but it was actually the most horrific thing I've ever done. Because when I woke up, washing over me was that incomprehensible demoralization, the four horsemen of, oh my God, what did I do? And that was like every morning at the end. And when it came over me that, oh God, I said those horrible things to my friends and my friends' teachers, my children's teachers, and they had kicked me out of the group, and I realized I couldn't go to the grocery store because I'm the tall tattooed American woman, like everyone knows who I am and everyone knows what I said, and I mean fucking everyone. So I couldn't go to the grocery store. My alcoholism has isolated me to a place where I'm now incredibly humiliated. And my husband was so used to this behavior that he said, well, where are we moving now? Because I can't go to the grocery store for you every day. And you've now humiliated our children. And I said, we have to go back to America. Maybe it's Australia. That's the problem, right? We left to get away from the problem. Maybe it's Australia. So we went back to America, and I said, it's going to be different. I have to change. This behavior has gotten out of control. Everyone hates me and I hate everybody, and it has to change, and I'm going to change. And it was the first time I said I was going to change. I didn't say I wasn't going to drink, but I said I was going to change. And it was the very, 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 very first day that we moved to America, a whole country again. It was the very first day that I moved back to a new country. And I got drunk and physically abused my whole family. I actually assaulted my husband and my child, and my husband, while he was holding a baby. And, as the police came and they arrested me in front of my kids. And I remember looking at my daughter screaming in the window, and it was like, if they love me, they shouldn't love me anymore. They shouldn't love me. And I came home, walking home at like 5 a.m. from jail. And I knew in my heart, I had this moment of clarity. If they let me back in the house, that they shouldn't, and that I, for the first time ever, became the problem, that alcohol was the issue, and that I had a problem with alcohol, and that I needed help doing that, and I knew exactly where to go. And even this self-knowledge of knowing I was an alcoholic, and the most shame I've ever had crawling back into my home, I drank again that night. I drank again that night. And the next morning I got on my knees and I looked at my son to be his height, and I said, I'm going to be gone a lot because I have to stop drinking. And he said, I'd rather you be gone all the time than drunk all the time. And that gave me permission to walk out of the house, to go straight to AA. And I came crawling back 8 years later on my hands and knees. I was, the very first day sober, approached by a woman armed with some facts about herself. It was the greatest gift God ever gave me, was this bitch who I did not like at all. She walked in the room and she was happy. She was smiling. And at that point, I really saw smiling as a form of weakness. So I was not impressed. I was not impressed by her joy because I was dying. And, she came over, and it was a birthday meeting, and it was like, happy birthday, Will, 4 years, happy birthday. And someone stupidly asked me to share, and I was like, well, I'm so happy that you're here, Will, but I'm dying. So, like, when's someone going to help me? Is anyone going to tell me how to get sober? Like, good on you. I'll come back because there's cake and I have nowhere else to go. But, like, this is stupid. And when's someone going to help me? And I remember the woman, she offered me her business card, and it said, if you want someone to take you through your steps, I will. She didn't offer me friendship. She didn't offer to take me to meetings. She didn't offer to take me to Denny's. She didn't offer to hear about my problems. She just offered to take me through this 12 steps. And I was horrified, the audacity. How dare she offer to help me? And okay, I dare you, I called her that night and I said, this isn't going to work, but if you want to do it, I'm game. And she came to me, she didn't make too hard of terms for me to get well. She actually matched my energy with how fast I wanted to progress. So, she came over to my house and started the work immediately. On the first day of sobriety, she opened up the big book and she read the words phenomenon of craving. I'd never heard that before. No one, no therapist, no drug counselor, no psychologist, no rehab had ever fucking said the words phenomenon of craving. And I go, stop. I don't know. I have that. Like, that's the thing I have. That's why. She's like, yeah, I have that too. And now she had a job and all her teeth, so I didn't relate to her as a person, and I didn't like her as a person with her personality, like being happy or nice and stuff. But she said this thing, which was the first thing in 34 years that made sense to me, that when I start drinking, I can't comfortably stop. I don't like when people say I can't stop. Yes, I can. Okay. I have a fancy husband. We would go out to fancy lunch sometimes. And for me not to embarrass myself and to be socially acceptable, I knew I could have 2 glasses of wine. And so I would have those 2 glasses of wine and I would stop drinking. I could do that. Um, Lo and behold, I didn't know that the fact that I felt fucking terrible when I stopped drinking after those 2 glasses of wine and wanted to rip my skin off and became so agitated that I'd have to leave really, really soon after that stopping and go home and keep drinking till I was done is actually alcoholism. I didn't know that part. So when people said, oh, I can't stop, I'm like, what are you talking about? Yes, I could. I could. But what makes me an alcoholic is that I can't comfortably stop do that. And so when I read this word, I'm a fact checker about everything in my life. I ran home. I was like, babe, when you'd have those 2 beers at lunch and then go back to work, how did you feel? And he would be like, sleepy. And I'm like, sleepy? I feel fucking homicide. What? Like I was so horrified. What do you mean? You don't feel rage? And he's like, no, I feel a little tired. And I'm like, that is not what I'm doing. And I ran to my best friend and said the exact same thing. And I said, what does the phenomenon of craving mean to you? And she goes, nothing. And I was like, what? I just had this huge moment of like, I have this thing and no one in my life could relate to it. And I was shocked. I was floored. I have this thing. And I go, that's cool. I just won't drink then. And she goes, bad news. There's a whole nother chapter. There's bad news. There's no good news in step 1 whatsoever. So this first awakening is that I had a phenomenon of craving, which only progresses. And it made sense to me that I could only drink on the weekends. And then all of a sudden Friday was a weekend. And then all of a sudden also Monday was a week. And then all of a sudden Thursday was a needed day to drink. And Wednesday was the middle of the week. So I had to drink on that day. And Tuesday was just a stupid, pointless day. So why not drink on that day? That is the progressiveness of what I have and why I could start out drinking as much alcohol as I wanted to drink. I'm really old. I used to drink 40s. I'm a little ghetto. I don't know. Like I could have Boone's Farm. That's again how old I am. When I was a teenager. And then all of a sudden, the amount of drinks that I had kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was the single most wonderful moment in my life when I understand why I accidentally kept drinking too much. And that other people would go out and get drunk and wasted, and they would go out and get drunk a lot, including my husband, almost every day. And looking back, I go, why'd you drink so much all the time with me if you're not alcoholic? He's like, because you've made it sound like a good idea, and you're annoying when you're drunk, so I'd have to drink to be around you. He would choose to get drunk often, all the time, because I just mentioned it. I'm a good time. At least I'm convincing that I'm a good time. And so I fight you in the parking lot or sleep with your husband, I'm a good time. And it, for the first time, made sense as to why my drink number was 7. And in my early 20s, I could hit it. I could drink 7 drinks. I could be happy drunk. I could maintain my goal weight. I could make it to work the next day. Now, I knew if I had 8 drinks, I'd probably get sick. I'd probably be too hungover to work properly. I'd probably, feel like shit. So why all of a sudden did I start drinking 8? And no trigger and no trauma could explain that to me. I couldn't blame my dad for all of a sudden accidentally drinking more alcohol than I knew that I wanted to drink. I couldn't blame my dad for drinking more days in a week than I knew that I wanted to drink. It didn't make sense to me. So when this woman who I didn't like very much explained to me one of the symptoms of alcoholism, and I instantly knew I had that, I didn't think Alcoholics Anonymous was going to work, but I was prepared to be willing to listen to the rest of what she had to say. And then we read more about alcoholism. This was all in my first day sober. I actually did steps 1 through 3 the first day. And I learned that I have an illness of my mind as well, that the phenomenon of craving is still there. We don't treat that in AA. I'll always have it. And I am a recovered alcoholic because I've been restored to sanity. However, I will always, always, always have the one symptom of alcoholism inside of me that is the physical feature. We don't treat that here. And that's why we don't have a solution for moderate drinking. I have to be convinced when I'm going to step 3 that if I can't drink moderately, then what do I do? And I found out that I couldn't drink moderately. and that I actually have this mental obsession. And it's not that I'm constantly thinking about drinking, it's that my mind will change into whether or not I have a drink. The big book tells me there's 3 times when I pick up the first drink, no matter what. It's when I will tell myself that today's going to be different than yesterday. So I can't really will away me telling myself that it's going to be different. The second time is that I'm telling myself it's probably going to be as fucking terrible as it was yesterday, but giddy up, knowing it's going to be horrible, but I'm pretty justified because it was like I broke 3 nails today. So it's time to get wasted. And then the third time is that I have absolutely no idea what happened. I had no intention of drinking. I was going someplace I didn't want to drink, and then I knew if I drank that I would not be able to get to the place that I wanted to go to yet. I looked down, I have a glass of wine in my hand. So there's 3 different times where willpower becomes completely non-existent to me when I pick up and it's just every single time I pick up the first drink. I'm making a PowerPoint presentation to myself about why I should not drink, and then I'm losing to myself. My only fight is mental, and the only person I'm fighting against myself, and the only person I am losing to is myself. And that's when I understood the 3 pertinent ideas that I have alcoholism and that I can't actually manage my own life. I can't seem to choose abstinence no matter what, that no human power has been able to fix me, and I tried all of them, and that maybe God could. I have these 3 Laura Brennan edits to the big book, which no one cares what I think, which is great. But I always say, the first time I come to this part in the book, the 3 pertinent ideas, I don't have any evidence this is going to work. So when you tell me God can and will, if you ever thought, I really don't believe that he can, but I am willing to try, and it's really good news that that's all that's required is this willingness. And it says it over and over and over up to, step 9, that this is it. That's it. Be willing. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter that I don't believe it's going to work. It doesn't matter I don't like it here. It doesn't matter I don't like my sponsor. It doesn't matter that I actually dislike every single step. If I'm willing to just move my feet, it promises me recovery. What? That's so good, because I am like a low energy type of gal. Like, I really don't like exertion, physical, mental, nothing. So if you're just telling me I got to turn up and show up, do the deal, I'm down for that. So, we get to step 3 and I say that prayer and I go, this is dumb, but let's get to launching. And, the next time she came to my house about 3 days later, we began this step 4 process. And the reason I have to go through all this stuff is because to get to step 8 and 9, I had to understand what it was that I am making amends for. And up until step 4, it was you. Oh, it was fucking you, I came to step 4 excited. I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell you what they've done to me. Because that is all therapy gave me, is what they did to me, And I drank off that. I drank off that knowing with my big smart ass brain that it wasn't that. I knew it wasn't, but nobody gave me a damn thing other way to be, except to believe that it was you and my traumas and my triggers. So, I get to the step 4 presentation. I have like a 3-ring binder, I have like a metal whiteboard and like now let's go to when I was 7, like all the things that were done to me. And I was so stoked because that was it. It was like, my parents had died by the time I was 18. Poor orphan Laura. Giddy up, get your tissue out, sponsor. I was so excited doing these first columns about all the things that were done to me and this horrible life that I had that I knew in my heart wasn't actually true. And I was drinking on the best days of my life. So again, I knew it wasn't that, but I didn't have another way. So I began the step 4 process, and I actually did it with my sponsor in the same day. I don't usually take people through that day, but God knew what I needed. And, by the 4th column of the 4th step, something happened. Something began to happen where for the first time in my entire life, I was wrong. What? 34 years, I'd never been wrong a day in my life. And for the first time in my life, I was wrong. And I began to see God, you, myself, and everyone in the whole world in a new perspective. And let me tell you, it hurt like hell. I became in more pain between 4 and 9 than I've ever been in my life. And I think a misconception that alcoholics believe that we should feel good all the time is one of the reasons that I got here in the first place. And one of the reasons that most of us don't recover is that recovery is so violently painful. Just hearing the truth for the first time that, most of us don't don't do the work and don't finish. And I had that experience. I had to have a very strong group of women around me to drag me by, I had hair at the time, drag me through this. The kindest gift that was given to me by an old timer woman, she goes, "You don't got to get sober gracefully." And I went kicking and screaming through the rest of this process. But in step 4, my sponsor, for the first time in my whole life, gave me a new perspective on things. And what the true gift was like, if other people are truly the problem, there's no solution for me. If my dad's the problem, he's dead. What's the solution there? I'm not getting apologies from anybody. I hear all the therapy talk where they're like, just say sentences like, "When you do this, you make me feel this." What are you talking about? Like, that's still blaming other people for how I feel. It's still me telling you what to do to make me happy, joyous, and free. And I fucking tried that. I tried that into the 3 pertinent ideas when it says no human power can relieve my alcoholism. Every time I feel bad and want someone else to change to make me feel different, it is me demanding that they treat my alcoholism. It's demanding that a human power can fill up this big, huge hole in my soul. And we got to the step 3, step 4 experience, and it goes, what if you just have this big, huge hole in your soul, and every time you're trying to stuff money and power and prestige and men and sex and drugs into it and it fails? That's what it's talking about. I tried to get you to change to make me feel better, and I got what I wanted most of my life. And I still, at the end of all this, was bedridden with alcoholism and wanting to die every day. If other people are the solution, their problem, there is no solution. So when she gets me to step 4 and tells me, what if you just are spiritually disconnected? What if you, Laura, live in your head and that's what's always screaming? This is my grouch in the brainstorm. This bitch is real loud, She's like a monologue always going off about what someone else did and what I'm going to do about it and where we're going to go and how we're going to fix it. But what if God lives within every man, woman, and child right here and this is my soul? And what if I'm just disconnected? What if all of my expectations, my judgment, my unkindness, my self-righteousness, my criticisms of others, what if all of my unforgiveness and my ego and my fear, what if it's just clogged up this channel from my ego to my heart, my head to my heart, that could actually make me a human that could function in the world? What if I'm just so blocked off with self and fear and self-righteousness and self-seeking and self-centeredness? What if that's it? There's a solution there, that's incredible news. What if it's just this is all blocked off? And the first time I get here, I don't have experience of living from my heart. I don't. Maybe when I was teeny tiny little, but I instantly was such a selfish cow since I was like 5 that this is really clogged up. And she explained all these things, am I a self-sacrificer? Am I dishonest? Do I make assumptions? Am I inconsiderate, playing God, prideful? Are these things in every single one of your resentments? And I mean every single one. And the answer was yes. I saw me for the first time at the end of step 4 for who and what I truly was. I became armed with some facts about myself, and they weren't fucking nice. I have a 2-part illness that's going to kill me. I'm completely blocked off from God and the people around me because of these defects of character. I also find out in step 4 that it's not just me, that it's every single human on this planet. Selfishness is not an alcoholic problem. Is Jeff Bezos an alcoholic? Sorry, really, let's look around the room here. Like alcoholism is a 2-part illness. My human spiritual malady is that I step on other people's toes, they retaliate, and other people, alcoholics or not, step on mine, and then I do as well. And if the only way to get set free is to jump out of that cycle, then the only person that I can fix is myself. And if I'm able to willing to get into myself and really look at what's going on and follow the rest of the steps, and there's a solution to alcoholism, let's fucking giddy up, That's really exciting news to me. So by the end of step 4, I had an entire psychic change. Sex inventory is my favorite part of the whole book. I'm so controversial, Carol, about that. I think after you've been through your whole 12 steps from now on, only use the sex inventory to make your amends. What? I know, I'm crazy. Because it's incredible. I find out in the sex inventory that the common denominator in every failed relationship with every failed human I've ever been in contact with was me. I'm the common denominator. I'm the problem 100% of the time. And then I get to step 6 and I'm like, oh crap, I can't fix myself. Wah, wah, But it's actually kind of a good news because it's like, God, if you want to change me, you have to do it. If you want me to be sober, you have to. I'm powerless over this stuff. This isn't a choice. I'm in a lot of trouble, and there's no way that this is going to work in my head, except I get to step 7 and I'm willing. And so I get down on my knees and I'm like, I'm ready. I suck. I'm so sick of myself by step 7. I see all of my faults. I see all that's blocking me off from God. This actually makes sense. Logic is great stuff. I love it today. But if I don't have any spirituality in my logic, it takes away all opportunity for miracle. And that's what I needed to stay sober. So I looked at step 7 was simply a willingness, because the first time in my life I saw the problem and it was me. I saw the ways that I turned up and showed up in every single relationship with every single human I'd ever met. And the problem was me. Yeah, they were the problem. There were some shitty people in my life, but guess what? I was pretty shitty to attract them in the first place. So we get here to step 7. I'm on my knees and I am done with me. I don't like me. You don't like me. We're the same. Okay. I see the problem. And so I get down on my knees and I go through this list of human character defects that have blocked me completely off from God. And I'm like, I am done. And I'll tell you what, I had a profound step 7 experience. Like, for the first time, I saw what selfishness looked like, because it had to be explained to me. And I'm driving down the street, and look over and be like, ugh, her hair. And then it'd be like in front of me in block letters, like a computer screen, it'd be like, judgmental. And I'd be like, oh God, sorry. Okay, take that away, And then I'd like walk into the place and I'd be like, oh, where's my coffee? And it'd be like, self-centeredness. I'm like, oh, fuck, sorry. Okay, take that away. It was like constant. Here's why you're blocked. This is why you hurt. This is why you're restless, irritable, discontent. Look at it. And it sucked. I was so sick of myself. I was like, I suck. Woo, it was a big experience. And so I was willing, and we get to step 8. And for the first time in my whole life, I saw the truth. I was willing to write that list. And my step 8 list, sure, it had some people I was resentful at, but turned out a lot of the people on my step 4 list fucking did nothing to me. I set the ball rolling. They retaliated. It was me just being a dick from the get-go. And shocking enough, therapy told me that step 4 list is why I was drinking. Turns out it was my step 8. Turns out that I am a tornado roaring my way through the lives of other people. All my relationships are fucked. My kids hate me. My husband is broken. And this is me. This is why I'm drinking myself to death. If karma's real, step 8 is that there it is, And so I wrote down my step 8 list. Sure, there are people on 4 there, but the ones I really had to make amends to were not. They were the people that I just hurt, and I'm the one who stepped on their toes. And it was a list of about a page and a half, single spaced, to people that I'd harmed. And I was so lucky to have the sponsor I did. I was in so much pain going through my steps. I understand why people don't complete them, because it's a violently painful process. And I took a Sharpie, I did these amends as quickly as I could, and I would Sharpie their name off, because here's the thing. From my years of experience today, I find that the worst thing that's going to happen to you in your amends is you're going to be embarrassed. And I would go through a lot of trouble to avoid embarrassment, that I was terrified to admit my wrongs. And to this day, I still don't like doing this, leveling your pride is not my favorite function. And, but I was willing, and this is when I was taught to really start holding on to this power to start getting me through these things, because up until now, there hasn't been any real action moving my feet. Up until now, it's been me taking from the program and taking from God. And now I have to go out and start doing this work that it explains to me earlier, is that God's the principal and I'm the agent, and that he is the director, and I'm just fuck all, I'm just this kid. And I found out that I was hurting all his kids, and I found out that all his kids are hurt too, and they're hurting me, and we're just some stupid, tall, tattooy kids running around fucking up in the world, and who am I to be such a jerk? And I started that list. I did an easy one first, and then my hardest one second, and 9 out of 10 of them didn't go the way that I planned, and thank God for that, All I was taught to do was to pray, and I have a 4-part amends process, and it looks like me calling and telling them why I'm here, telling them, turns out I'm an alcoholic. Guess who was shocked? No one, because I need to be of service to men and the people around me, and the people around me are drunks and the people that I've hurt. And, I know you don't want to hear from me, girl, but I stole $100 from you and then slept with your boyfriend that night. I know you thought it was the other girl, but it was me, and I hurt you. I know that I hurt you. And then the third part is I say, tell me what your experience was. Tell me what this looked like to you. Tell me how this affected you. And the reason that my first two bullet points are real short is because as an alcoholic, I don't know what I did. I actually don't know the truth of me from your perspective. Because if I did, I probably wouldn't have done it in the first place. And so when I asked them to explain to me their experience of me, this is the first time in my whole life that I'm humbled to the ground. I am taken down to the ground for who and what I truly am and how much I hurt the people that I loved. Some of the things that were said to me, I remember my roommate, I was drunk and tried to make food, and I put oil in a pan and turned it on, and then went to let it warm up, and I passed out, and I started a fire in our kitchen. And my boyfriend woke up and he took the flaming pan and he threw it out the front door of the apartment, and the flames went up the door of the other apartment. It burned through my carpet, and everything's on fire, and everything had to come. I didn't even apologize. I had this dog that I didn't ask her to get, and it peed everywhere and ripped up the carpet. And we moved out, and I moved to Australia. And a creditor called me and he said, you owe us $600. And I was like, I don't, because I moved to Australia, so I owe you nothing. I was like, good luck, bitch. And I hung up, not remembering this woman was also on my lease. And I knew I owed her $600. I knew I did. So I called her, and I said, I know I owe you some money. Do you want to tell me what this was like for you? And she said, put your husband on the phone. I was like, okay. I put my husband on the phone, and she spent about 45 minutes telling him on speakerphone who and what I was to her. She said that I would come home from work and I would instantly get drunk, and I would leave my baby to just crawl around the apartment, and I would pass out, and she would have to come home and take care of him. And sometimes he'd be drinking out of beer bottles, and sometimes I wouldn't feed him, and that I'd bring other men to the house every single night. And she felt so uncomfortable that that's why she moved out. And she was so afraid of me that she couldn't even tell me, And she finally gets on the phone after 45 minutes of telling him who I am. And she said, you don't owe me $600, you owe me $8,000. And I was like, curious. She goes, well, I decided to fight that in court. So they decided to tack on all the charges of the fire. And I ended up losing. And that fire cost me $8,000. And I knew that she was right. And I said, the last bullet point is, how can I make this right with you? And she said, I need you to pay that money back. And so I did, all of it. And that's one of the amends. The other 9 out of 10 that didn't go the way that I planned is when I got sober in America. I had moved right next to my ex-boyfriend, who we broke up when I was 15, but did not stop sleeping together until I was 26. And during that time, he got a girlfriend who became his fiance, who became his wife, who became the mother of his children, yet I was not done sleeping with him. And then I decided to tell her one day, which was beautifully laid out. And I went back to go make their amends, and I said, would you come out and talk to me? I'm in AA, I'm sober now, and I have to clean up this mess. I know how much I've hurt you both. And his response was, I'm glad you're in AA, and I really hope you stay sober, but don't you ever fucking talk to either of us again. And what happened in that day is my fear left. Hey, girl. What happened that day is my fear left that I didn't know that I had. I had a fear of going to the grocery store every single day because I was afraid to see Melissa. Every single day that I'd moved to that place, we shared a grocery store, and I was afraid to walk in, and I'm looking around the aisles because I was so afraid to see her because of what I had done. This fear that I didn't know existed until I made my amends. And that day, them both seeing that and go fuck yourself, but I'm glad you're sober, was the first day of my life where the fear disappeared. It fell off of me. I knew in my approach and owning what I did that I could walk into the grocery store, and if Melissa saw me and she wanted to clock me in the jaw, I'd be like, I know. I so know, right? And I wasn't afraid of her anymore because I was willing to do anything to make it right with her. I was willing to do anything, including, being confronted in a store. And the fear of people started to leave me, paying back those amends, that fear of economic insecurity started to leave me as well. And all these miracles started to happen. And I remember sometimes I would forget about amends I had to make, and then they would come on specific days, and then I would go make that amend quickly when it came to me. And one was an ex-boyfriend. We had a wild time, and I said, I'm sorry if this is inappropriate. I know you're married, but like I have to really take responsibility for what I've done. And that's when all of this stuff where it says that our main purpose is to become of maximum service to God and the people about me, and the people about me are drunks. So the reason that I tell those 3 stories is because over the next 3 years, I began to get phone calls from some of these people. And one of them was from the woman that I owed all the money to. She said, I have mouth cancer and I've lost my daughter and I'm an alcoholic. And you called to make that an amend and I need help. And I said, oh, what? And I go, well, I know how to do that. She said, I remember all this years ago. It was probably about 6 years later that I made the amend to her and that I said that I'm in AA and I need to fix this. And she's sober today. I was able to direct her to the exact place I got sober in that way. And that's when it says that I am making these amends to be of service to other people. And one of those boyfriends who waited, I waited, I didn't remember, again, like about not even 3 months later, he called and said, I remember you calling to make that amend, and I have a real problem with alcohol. And I don't think until you made that amend, I realized how bad I was, So in that time, when I made that amend to him, that was another person who came back looking for the solution to what I'd found, When I got to this point, things began to change. I now saw the things that were blocking me off, my head to my heart, my ego to God. And one by one, every single amend I made, every single time that I asked God to remove these things, all of a sudden this started clearing out. And I did my steps as quickly as possible. I did all the steps in 24 days. And after that, my sponsor gave me her big book and she said, go help people. And I was like, well, people are going to die if I'm in charge. I forgot that whole God process thing, but I just stuck to the words in the big book and began to have a new experience with the rest of my life. When I went out, we talked so much about my dad, and the greatest amend I made was directly after, when I began to make my amends. I went and I sat in the garage by myself, smoking a cigarette, and I saw for the first time in my whole life, my dad was just a man. He was just a child of God like me. He was super fallible. He was not gifted with a whole new way to live. He did the best that he could, just like me every single day. And my heart poured out to my father, even though he was dead, alone in this freezing cold garage in Colorado. And I felt my dad for the first time since he died, and something had completely changed in me. The truth is for 34 years, I lugged around this 160-pound resentment of my father. And after my amend to him, I never to this day had an ill thought about him again. Not a single one of the amends that I've made has ever come back in my resentment mind. And I've never had to look at these things again, except to be of service to other people. I thought I was drinking because of what I wrote down in that second column of step 4. I was drinking because of what that list was written in step 8. And the only way my alcoholism was going to be relieved is if I did all the work in step 9, I didn't like any of this shit, but here we are. And then next week we'll talk about step 10 and how you get to do it over and over for the rest of your life till you die. I think I'll stop there. Thanks, Steve.